Welcome back to the channel. Warhammer Man back in the studio, about to take a look at some more NIDs. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe for Warhammer 40,000, Kill Team, Necromunda, Age of Sigmar, and warcry content. All types of reactions, reviews, news, unboxings, and pretty much anything to do with the hobby. That being said, let's jump right in. More wounds, more attacks, more carnage. Your Tyranid monsters are evolving. So let's take a look. A shadow hangs over the galaxy in Warhammer 40,000. The shadow of the Hive Fleet's Codex Tyranid's is making its way inexorably towards fans, presumably to devour them, or at least their hobby time. We've already seen the Synaptic Imperative rule, and if you didn't check that out, I did a video on that. Very cool, definitely going to strengthen the fleet. And now we're moving on from brains to gene splicing brawn as we take a look at the most enormous beasts the Tyranids can bring into battle. There are fundamental changes to the latest evolutions of these biomorphic fiends from the old versions you once knew. Every big bug in the army is improving, but we're going to take a look at two of the biggest winners in the codex that is absolutely packed with more grisly gargantuans than you can shake a bone sword at. And here we see a pretty nice little swarm. Bunch of big old bugs. Very cool. Nice picture. First up, it's the old workhorse of the Tyranid Hive Fleet, the trusty Carnifex. These rugged and adaptable beasts can support a whole host of biomorphs and weapons, such as Stranglehold Talons, Scything Talons, and Death Spitters. Every one of them is a living battering ram designed to inflict maximum carnage whilst soaking up heavy firepower. To that end, they have evolved improved movement, weapon skill, wounds, and save characteristics in the new codex. So here we see the old Carnifex data slate compared to the new one. So it used to be movement 7, it is now 8. It used to be weapon skill 4, it is now 3. Ballistic skill is still 4. Strength is still 6. Toughness is still 7. Wounds used to be 8, and now it is 9. Attacks used to be 4, still 4. Leadership 6, still 6, and save used to be 3+, it is now 2+. So obviously, very nice improvements. You have max wounds without being, an issue for them. Obviously, the additional weapon skill is huge. That is going to improve their output substantially on their limited number of attacks. And then obviously the strength is not an issue because they do have a bunch of strength bonuses depending on what weapon you take. The extra movement will be nice, and then obviously the most important thing here, the weapon skill is very important, but the most important thing here I think is the save as well. So having a 2+ save is really nice, and then knowing that with the new rules that we just saw, basically, if you're taking, let's say for instance, let's say we have one of the random Hive Fleet abilities in effect, you could basically guarantee now that you're going to have an invulnerable save on these things. So essentially you have a 2+ save and then a 4+ invulnerable save. So that is huge. And then even just your regular bugs are going to have whatever their weak save is and then a 5+ save as well. Now granted, that's only going to be in effect if you have Zoanthropes and if that specific synapse ability is active. But some of the other ones are going to be good as well, like falling back out of combat if you're bogged down by a bunch of junk and then recharging something else only by being close to a Hive Tyrant, having a Hive Tyrant active, or some of the other ones could be pretty awesome as well. So I think that we're going to see these bugs being better than ever. So these Vanguard organisms now get into combat faster and stick around longer, something that should put fear into the commanders who think they know how to deal with the Carnifex brood. And that extra wound is big too, because anything more than that, and you would have to worry about it degrading. So now it's maximum without degrading, which is awesome. On top of those 4 attacks, their Scything Talons now grant an additional attack each time they fight. So a classic 4 Talon loadout will attack 8 times, with AP -3 attacks that do 3 damage each. Now grant an additional attack. So if it has 4 Talons, it gets +4 attacks. So now it would have 8. So if it has 1 pair of Talons and then Crushing Claws instead, it would probably have 6 attacks, and then the Crushing Claws would give it a bonus to its strength for those specific attacks. So pretty cool. AP -3 is obviously a big deal, and 3 damage flat on the Scything Talons definitely a big deal as well. So, let's be real. We're seeing constant like rules bloat on everything. Everything is doing more damage, and then having more attacks and just getting so much more killy. That's part of what happens with additions as they go. Everything gets a ton of extra rules. Everything gets bigger, harder, stronger, more wounds, more damage. Like it just gets, it's the bloat. It's the codex creep. Carnifexes have even inherited the rock hard chitin, whatever you want to say, exoskeletons that the Hive Fleet experimented with in the recent Crusher Stampedes, granting them damage reduction. We can imagine the hive mind crackling in its multi-tendoned voices as it pushes a synaptic imperative over the swarm, making them even more formidable. So the armored exoskeleton rule is, each time an attack is allocated to this model, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack, to a minimum of 1. This is not cumulative with any other abilities that reduce the damage characteristic of an attack. Carnifex aren't the only colossal creatures getting juiced up by the Hive Fleet. So before we move on to that, that's huge. So we're looking at a bunch of like movement increases. We're looking at 2-up save. We're hitting on 3s now. We're potentially having, instead of 4 attacks, 8 attacks at -3 damage, -1 damage, to a minimum of 1. And then, the potential for either breaking out of combat and charging, 4-up invulnerable save. There's a lot of other abilities as well. So going to be able to kind of tailor this, and then that's all before we take into account like the specific Hive Fleet adaptations, etc. So we're going to see Tyranids very strong here. Obviously, it depends on points and everything. Depends on composition, what's going to be best in a list. But I definitely think we're going to see Tyranids back stronger than ever. And obviously, Crusher Stampede already made them very good. So I think it's safe to assume the Codex is going to make them even better than Crusher Stampede. So definitely going to be a thing. So let's keep going. Maleceptors have also received upgrades, including a pip of extra movement and toughness, more wounds, and improved ballistic and weapon skill. This makes it easier to plunge one into the thick of action, which is even more valuable thanks to the new synaptic imperatives, especially since the particular synapse node doubles up as a giant psychic shotgun. So the Maleceptor old and new stats. So it was movement 7, it is now movement 8, similar to the Carnifex. It was weapon skill 4, it is now weapon skill 3, similar to the Carnifex. Was ballistic skill 4, it is now ballistic skill 3. Strength was 7, is still 7, but no longer degrades. Previously, movement did not degrade, but weapon skill and strength did. Now, movement, weapon skill, and ballistic skill all degrade. So it starts off better, but then it degrades kind of back to like where it used to be. So it's really not bad, because it used to be movement 7, weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 4. Now it's movement 8, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3. So the first time it degrades, it's probably going to go down to its old stats. So that's pretty good. And then its strength no longer degrades. So overall, definite buff here. So strength still 7, toughness went from 7 to 8, wounds went from 12 to 15, and then it's still 3 attacks. It is now 10 leadership and 3+ save. This is far from everything the Hive Fleets have up their chitinous sleeves for the Titanic Terrors, but you'll have to wait for Codex Tyranids, reap the benefits of the Hive Fleet's evolutions. Keep checking on the Warhammer community site as we delve even deeper into the unknown machinations of the hive mind. So seeing some pretty cool rules so far, and obviously, just a little bit of them have been revealed. Once again, we see a Imperial Knight, this time swarmed by quite a few Tyranid creatures. Definitely looking forward to these big beasties. I hope it is viable to take some sort of combination of like a swarm and big creature army. I love the mixed army. It's super cool to have things like, Crusher Stampede, where you can take a bunch of big bugs. It's cool to have the ability to swarm and take 100 models if you want. But I think most people probably want somewhere in between. They want a little bit of everything. So I just hope that's like a viable option. I suspect it will be. We've seen quite a bit of diversity in the ways that you can build with the new codexes and still be like viable, competitive. Obviously, there's always going to be like one kind of like top list or, basically like, way that you can be the most efficient, most effective, or exploit something that's undercosted or overpowered. But overall, as long as everything, is viable. I think most people are playing to be, you want to be fun and kill stuff, but most people are not playing at like the highest levels. So definitely excited for the new rules so far. We've seen so far the, the Parasite of Mortex. So we know there's at least one model coming. Seeing some rumors that will actually be a dual kit, and you'll be able to make that into the Red Terror as well, which would be cool because then you'll have a spare set of wings you can do stuff with. You'll also, I think he looks like the Red Terror, so if you took off the wings and changed them around a little bit, I could totally see that being viable. So hopefully that is a thing. I love when they do the dual kits, and that's very common in the Tyranid range. Everything we're seeing here Tyranid-wise is obviously one of those dual kits. Seeing a bunch of cool buffs for the army-wide bonuses with the synapse stuff. Seeing obviously some buffs to the stat lines and everything. I think giving everything pretty much hitting on 3s, 2-up saves, and then potential for an invulnerable save is pretty much what Tyranids needed. It's definitely what Tyranids needed. Because previously, all your big bugs could just get waxed by a couple big guns. And now that we have guns that are doing like, 10 to 14 damage pretty easily with some mortal wounds on top, you're talking about just basically splatting a bug with a single shot. So having an invulnerable save will at least help against some of them. Maybe there'll be a shrug, the -1 damage, bunch of cool stuff, a little extra movement, so maybe you can get there a little quicker. I would love to see Tyranids be in a place where you don't have to have Forge World to be good, but you could still have Forge World if you want. Similar to Custodes. Most Custodes armies have some Forge World in them, but you're not required to take Forge World to be good. Maybe at the absolute top level you are, but I think a lot of people don't want Forge World. They don't like resin, or they don't want to pay, the extra price for those models. So I just like the ability to have a little bit of everything. But looking forward to the new Combat Patrol. A little heavy on the Termagants, in my opinion, but we'll see how they are. Supposedly they're getting a nice little buff too. So if the big bugs get a buff and the little bugs get a buff, when it's all said and done, I think Tyranids are going to be in a nice place. And we know, there's only a few more codexes coming down the pipe, so it'll just be a matter of time. Hopefully we'll see something for the Knights in the future. We know Chaos, Imperial Guard, potentially like Demons. So we'll see what's up. Definitely getting excited for the Tyranids for now. Obviously, Tau and Eldar have been doing quite well recently. And, every codex that comes out just seems like it's a little better than the rest. So if you're still waiting on your codex, know that by the time it gets here, it'll be worth the wait, because it's probably going to be pretty freaking awesome with all the rules bloat and new extra damage and extra durability. I suspect that each codex is going to continue being better than the last. So, but that is it for today. If you enjoyed the video, if you're excited about the Tyranids, let me know down below. Are you looking to build a Crusher Stampede type army? Are you looking more for the Swarm combination of in between? Are you really just excited to see bugs back on the table so that you can splat them because you really just don't like their creepy, crawly little gribbly guys? Just let me know down below. But that's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios. Oh, and of course, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy these kind of like rules, reviews, news, updates, unboxings, all kind of good stuff like that. Obviously, we show off commissions that go out of the studio. And then there's tons of painting tutorials, conversions, always list how we do everything, show off all the bits needed, the paints used, etc. So, but that's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and I'm out of here.